Good. Come on.
Does creative genius thrive only under certain conditions, or does it persist and grow under any and all conditions?
Parts, yeah. It can. It depends on what we mean by that. See? Are we talking about artists who demonstrated? Are we talking about scientists who demonstrated? Are we talking about, architects who demonstrated? What are we talking about? Creative genius. Mothers who demonstrated in the kitchen? Yes, of course. The manifestation of genius as something exceptional and extraordinary or profound, yes, requires certain conditions. It creates certain conditions. Certain conditions have to be created in order for it to manifest. So it's not like everybody has the same access to it, but yes, is it part of our nature? Definitely. Is it part of our consciousness? I guess you might say endowment? Yes, we have the ability, but we don't always have the karma to it. We don't have the bridge to it. We don't have access to it in the same way. So you have to find out, if you feel less than that, you have to find out what your access to that is and what your need is to access that. Because accessing that prematurely or let us say outside of a certain kind of resonance could be a problem. Then it becomes a curse. When you're not ready for the genius, then you're not ready. And you're going to know it. You can't handle it. It may destroy you. Because the genius is not the person. The person is not the genius. The genius is a separate reality. Yeah. That's why they say sometimes it whispers in your ear. It could be angelic, see? So it's not your ego. So what we see out here is, like in the music field, every person that has certain kind of hearing and musicality, they say, well, this is genius because it's exceptional in a certain way. But they're just prancing around. There's no genius there. See? There may be a part of it there. When we once spoke on the Wheel of Genius is showing up there. There's no genius there. Genius is huge. It's universal. It's cosmic intelligence. It's not a little bit of ability here, and you can take bows and you can what is the word? Impress the public. That's not all it is. Sure, that's part of it perhaps. But skill, inherited skill, is also that, and that's not genius. You can have talent to get up there and dance better than other peeps. Doesn't mean you're a genius at it. I mean, you can be called that because others who don't have that will say, well, you must be a genius because you just started doing that. See? So yeah, well, it's part of it, but it's not what it is. See? So we have to see genius as something bigger. So we can say there's no ordinary genius, but then there could be something called true genius, which creates its own conditions, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's something that is bigger than yourself. It's bigger than you and your family. It has something to do with the world and changing the world. Maybe slowly or maybe immediately. Depends. Yeah. So it's a mystery. And some people have access to it. Even now, right now you have access to it. But do you need it? And do you want to do what it takes to get to it? And can you meet its demands? And once you open that Pandora's box, are you ready to handle what it is? You certainly don't want to get there prematurely. You don't want to break into it. So you don't want to come in uninvited. Okay? Because it means more power and more force than most people can handle if we're talking about the same thing.
Chapter 112 is titled, Genius is the Fire Nobody Wants.
Exactly.
Are you implying that true genius is not respected or desired by
most people? Well, no, it's
people?
different. No, we have to use this more carefully. There are certain types of genius that are, let's say, creative results. Certain kinds of art, let's say, that are, I guess you might say unwelcome. Doesn't mean they're genius, though. Yeah. And we have to understand that. It means that there are different types of art. So we don't want to say something different is genius. No. It could be unique, but there's got to be something else. There's something else going on there, and you have to test that. See? And then you have to figure out what genius is as a level of intelligence, not just doing something. See, because that could be a result of training and habit, which we can't say genius is beyond that. Genius is beyond training. We have to understand that level of genius when we're talking about the composer, and the composers knew. Say, well, their training, everything that they had going on was like begging for genius, inspiration. So all the training and culture creates one result that could be by other standards a work of genius because it's so huge. But genius is not just hugeness in that sense. See? It's unique. It's a certain kind of uniqueness, but doesn't mean it's different. Like let's say Bach had it, You know, Beethoven had it, Mozart had it, okay? But it's not particularly in their works, particularly. Yeah? It's not limited to product, it's process. Right? It's intense process. It's not ego process, it's superconscious process as well. And we're all related to this, so I'm not saying anything for any purpose except just to consider what it could be. See?
In chapter 113 you write, as spirit souls progress in spiritual ways, they may only do so in contradistinction from operating on the robotic basis of mass social consciousness and national karma. Mm-hmm. How does one begin to identify and distinguish those mechanical tendencies and thought patterns that are a result of mass social consciousness and our national karma? Is it easy to recognize the influence, or can it oftentimes be too subtle to discern?
It's your education, it's your culturing, all of it. What you're made to believe and who you are made to believe you are is what it is. And that very thing called culture, habit, programming, right, is the problem. It's not the solution. So it doesn't amount to enlightenment, because when you're going to a school of enlightenment, for some strange reason they ask you to just stop and sit. And that's like the most immediate thing you have to learn. So forget everything you ever knew and were before you get into the door. As soon as you get in, you're going to sit on a cushion. And you're going to find out what you really are and who you really are in the process. That's the way of the masters. Now, of course, the masters, if we're going to say certain of them, want you to bring your culture and use it for the master as such. But for the most part, no, the idea is to stop that. See? Get out of time. See? Transcend the time world so you can get into your inner space. And sometimes that's what you need to do, and yet there are creative people who know how to access the inner space while they're in the time world. And we can say some of the greatest of achievers are also very spiritual people. See? Whether we're talking about George Lucas or Steven Spielberg or others, you know, where they have this very powerful sense of the spiritual while they're doing magnificently brilliant and profound and huge operations out here. See? So we do see that, but you know, we're talking about understanding it to the degree where, well, how does a person bring that into their life? See? So how do you use it? See? How do we use it? What are we doing to transcend our culturing, so that we're living less from the problem and more from the solution part of it? See? Well, you find your peace and happiness when you are at a proper, say, in a proper alignment with your culturing is not dominating you. Because as long as you're living the expectations of your culture, you can't be happy. Because it doesn't want that much out of you. It wants you to sleep more than it wants you to awaken. Because the fear is if you awaken, you start to defy it for what it is. You become more of a problem. Because you know too much. You see too much. And of course, doesn't mean you would want to be a problem necessarily, but you have the option to be a problem. But not because you are a problem, because you see as much. Yeah.